How Ukraine plans to win the war. In the 8 months since Russia invaded Ukraine, the Ukrainian military has conducted an outright onslaught against Russia with a strong defense, inflicting heavy casualties on Russian units and contesting every foot of ground. Against long odds, Ukraine managed to defend the capital Kyiv and its second largest city, Kharkiv. This has forced Russia to abandon its goal of a quick takeover of the country. Then on October 7th, the Ukrainian forces blew up the Crimean Bridge, a strategic span connecting the Russian-occupied Crimea Peninsula to Russia proper. It's going to take engineers a minimum of 9 months to finish the repairs to the Kerch Bridge. Are these the signs that Ukraine's victory is inevitable? In this video, we will discuss Ukraine's simple yet effective strategies and significant territorial gains, and Ukraine's 5 tactics to achieve this legendary victory. Ukraine's contesting air supremacy. Denying the Russians air supremacy is the foundation of Ukrainian success. Contesting control of the skies allows Ukrainian forces to maneuver while making Russian forces nervous that they could be subject to Ukrainian air assault. The Ukrainians were never going to take air supremacy for themselves. The Russian Air Force is too large and Russian forces well provided with anti-air systems. But the Ukrainian plan has made it difficult for Russian air forces to patrol over areas of battle. Ukrainian forces prevented Russia from winning control of Ukrainian airspace by combining a range of systems, including a small number of highly effective MiG fixed-wing aircrafts, advanced anti-air systems, and a plethora of handheld anti-air weapons such as Stinger missiles. Russian aircraft can and do bomb Ukrainian positions, but these missions seem to be very much of the in-and-out variety and don't involve the continual exercise of air power. Denying Russia control of cities, complicating the Russian military's communications and logistics. As the Ukrainians have thus maintained mobility for their forces, they have turned their cities into fortresses and roadblocks, complicating Russian logistics and communications. In a detailed announcement about the Ukrainian victory in the Battle of Kyiv, the country's Ministry of Defense noted that the capital was largely saved by the heroic efforts in Chernihiv and Sumy regions. These 2 cities sit close to the main road systems running from the northeast into Kyiv, and both cities withstood Russian attempts to take them early in the campaign. By holding these cities and almost all others close to the borders of Russia and Belarus, the Ukrainians have not only forced Russian troops to contemplate street-by-street fighting, but also made it impossible for Russia to move troops by rail into the Ukrainian heartland. Russia can still move troops by road, but having to avoid Ukrainian-controlled cities forces its troops to take longer and trickier routes. The cities that Russian forces bypass on their way to Kyiv can also be used to launch attacks behind Russian lines, allowing Russian forces to get strung out along roads in difficult-to-support columns, and attacking those columns from all sides. Having complicated Russian logistics efforts, the Ukrainians then allowed the Russian forces that had maneuvered around their cities to get strung out along roads as they advanced. The Russians made their situation worse by invading during the muddy season, confining them to narrow paved roadways and further limiting their ability to move. With their enemies in such a vulnerable position, the Ukrainians then launched attack on the long Russian columns. The attacks took a number of different forms, including air power, most famously the Turkish-made Bayraktar drones, special forces, long-range artillery, and even conventional formations. The Ukrainians stretched Russian personnel so thinly that they sometimes failed to defend the columns themselves. The casualties caused by Ukraine's harassing attacks hampered Russian attempts to build up enough forces to assault Kyiv. Though the Russians tried to advance on 3 different road systems, from Sumy, Chernihiv, and the northwest, Ukrainian resistance ensured that they never built up enough force to surround, let alone assault Kyiv. All 3 lines of attack have been shut down, and Russian forces are in retreat. Instead of assaulting heavy Russian formations of large tanks and artillery directly, the Ukrainians used light, maneuverable forces to take advantage of Russians' vulnerabilities and achieve victory. Using handheld weapons operated by small groups, the Ukrainians have regularly disabled Russian tanks and trucks. This has not only weakened the Russian forces in the field, but also kept their logistics line stretched, limiting Russian access to the fuel and ammunition required to keep up a constant attack. The number of Russian vehicles that have been abandoned intact but without fuel is particularly striking. In using light forces this way, the Ukrainians have shown that even in a conventional war between states, as opposed to an insurgency, a smaller force can engage the conventional forces of a larger and more technologically advanced enemy and fight them to a standstill. The Ukrainians have also reminded everyone that the American military, with its lavish logistical support and ability to dominate the air war and the electronic battlefield, is unusual. The Russian military is not some smaller, less efficient version of the US military. It is a significantly less advanced and less capable force that struggles to undertake many of the operations that the US handles with relative ease. The Ukrainians did not make the mistake of overestimating the Russians and were able to deal a huge blow to Russian power. Take advantage of the damaged Crimean Bridge. It's going to take engineers 9 months to finish repairs to the Kerch Bridge after Ukrainian forces blew up the strategic span connecting the Russian-occupied Crimea Peninsula to Russia proper on October 7th. The Kremlin ordered repairs to the $4 billion 11-mile span to wrap up in July 2023. Until then, Russian forces in southern Ukraine will depend on just one overland supply route, a rail line through eastern Ukraine that's well within range of Ukrainian artillery. That is to say, all the Russian field armies in and around the port of Kherson on Ukraine's temporarily occupied Black Sea coast are in trouble. They were struggling with resupply before the Ukrainians blew up the Kerch Bridge, twisting its twin rail lines and dropping one of its 2 road lanes. Now the struggle will get worse. The partial destruction of the Kerch Bridge presents the Russians with a significant problem. Ukraine has cut the main rail line into Kherson Oblast, the only other rail line connecting Russia to a railhead anywhere near Kherson, terminating in occupied Melitopol, lying just a few miles south of the front line near Volnovakha, north of Mariupol. Ukrainian troops could hit the line and any trains rolling along it with 120mm mortars, 115mm howitzers, and high-mobility artillery rocket systems. Ukrainian commanders know they've got 9 months to take advantage of Russia's logistical problem. 9 months to add a third counteroffensive to the counteroffensives they launched in the east and south 6 weeks ago. That third attack will almost certainly target Mariupol in order to cut in two the Russian army and starve half of it. US secret weapons. The most recent US security aid package for Ukraine includes dozens of howitzers, a type of artillery that fires shells at targets on high trajectories, as well as 144,000 rounds of ammunition and tactical drones. Previous announcements of weapons for Ukraine have included a wide variety of military equipment, ranging from body armor, helmets and rifles to radar systems, armored vehicles, and Soviet-designed helicopters that once belonged to Afghanistan. Besides Javelin missiles, the most powerful weapons include Stinger anti-aircraft systems, once famously used to shoot down Soviet planes in Afghanistan. The US has also shipped hundreds of Switchblade drones, which are designed to be sent crashing into enemy targets before exploding. Military experts say that the US-supplied anti-tank weapons have been among the most effective weapons in Ukraine's arsenal since the war began. As of this week, Ukraine claims to have destroyed more than 800 tanks and 2,000 other Russian vehicles. Ukraine, however, has not yet won the war. With their defeat in the Battle of Kyiv, the Russians have started to concentrate in the east and south of Ukraine, hoping to set up a defensive perimeter that the Ukrainians will have to attack if they hope to regain lost territory. The Ukrainian way of war will have to adapt. The Ukrainians, having witnessed the Russian failures in heavy assault, may decide to avoid making the same mistakes and instead continue their light attritional warfare. This will probably not result in a swift end to the war, but it offers the possibility of draining Russian military and political will, allowing Ukraine to achieve many of its aims in negotiations. The Ukrainian way of war could yet achieve what once seemed all but impossible: victory.